The cold morning settled over the commuter rail platform like a thin sheet of ice, sharp enough to sting Mina's cheeks each time the wind pushed past her. She stood near the yellow line, wishing she could disappear into her own breath. Her coat felt too thin, her gloves too old, and her heart too tired to hold itself upright. She didn't want to be there, not beside Ray, not standing with someone who treated her like a thing he owned. But she had learned long ago that wanting didn't matter much when the world around her belonged to someone else. Ray stood close behind her, so close she could feel the heat of his breath on the side of her neck. He smelled like cheap cologne and the bitter tobacco he told everyone he had quit years ago. He didn't talk. He didn't need to. His silence held the weight of command. Her mother Lila stood on the other side of him, clutching her purse the way a drowning person holds a floating piece of wood. She didn't look at Mina, she kept her eyes on the ground, as if staring at the tiles would protect her from everything she refused to face. Mina's fingers trembled inside her pockets. She wasn't scared of the cold. She was scared of what would happen if she spoke again. The argument that morning had been small. She had refused to hand Ray her last bit of money. That was all. Nothing dramatic, nothing unusual. But it was enough for him to get angry, enough for him to grab her wrist at the house, enough for her to know he would get worse before the day ended. She told herself to breathe. If she could just get on the train without trouble, she could sit somewhere far from him. Maybe she could make it through the ride. But Ray never allowed distance. He liked to stay close to remind her who was in charge. She felt it before she saw it, his hand sliding around her arm, tightening slowly, squeezing until the pressure became pain. "Don't you dare move away from me," he muttered. His voice was low and controlled, but she heard the anger rising beneath it. It was the kind of voice that could switch from a whisper to a scream without warning. Mina's body stiffened. She tried to pull her arm back gently, hoping he wouldn't notice, but he pulled harder. Her breath caught. "Race top," she whispered. He leaned his face near hers. "What did you say?" She glanced at her mother, silently pleading for help. "Mom, please." Her mother didn't lift her head. She didn't even blink. "Mina, lower your voice. People are around. Were around, but no one was looking. No one ever looked." Mina wondered sometimes if pain had a way of turning invisible when it wanted to be seen the most. The train screeched into the station, metal grinding against metal. Passengers gathered closer, adjusting bags, scrolling through phones, talking about work, talking about the day ahead. Normal conversations for a normal morning. Mina felt like she was living on a different planet. One where everything hurt and nothing made sense. When the doors opened, the crowd pressed forward. Ray shoved her ahead with a hand on her shoulder, pushing so hard she almost fell. She stumbled into the carriage and gripped a pole to keep herself upright. A few passengers glanced her way briefly, then looked away, uninterested. Pain wasn't interesting unless it was loud. Ray sat across from her the moment she found a seat. Her mother sat beside him, folding her hands in her lap as if she were praying silently. Mina kept her eyes on the window, trying to focus on the blurred buildings sliding past. She wished the world outside would slow down, just enough for her to step into it and run forever. Her arm throbbed where Ray had grabbed her. She tucked it closer to her chest, hiding the red marks that were already forming. Her heart beat too fast, too loud. She knew Ray wasn't finished. He never stopped after just one outburst. He liked the feeling of control too much to let it go easily. "Mina," he said, leaning forward, "look at me." She didn't. She couldn't. He reached across the small space and tilted her chin up with 2 fingers. His grip wasn't gentle. "Don't ignore me." Her voice trembled. "I didn't" before she could finish. Someone else spoke. "Excuse me?" Steady voice said from behind. Ray turned sharply. Mina did too, hope fluttering inside her chest before she could stop it. A man in a blue conductor's jacket stood near their row. His posture was straight, confident, but his eyes weren't harsh. They were focused, studying the situation with calm awareness. His name tag caught a sliver of light. "Livis. I saw what happened on the platform," he said. "Are you all right, miss?" Mina froze. Her heartbeat stumbled, unsure whether to race faster or stop completely. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Fear pushed against her throat like a fist. Ray scoffed. "We're fine. Family, business." Elias didn't look at Ray. He kept his eyes on Mina. "Miss, do you need help?" Ray moved slightly, blocking her from view. She said, "We're fine." "I didn't hear her say anything," Elias replied. His voice stayed calm, but his stance shifted just enough to show he wasn't backing down. A few passengers nearby started watching, curiosity rising. It wasn't a scene yet, but it was close. Ray's expression hardened. He hated being challenged, especially by strangers. "Mind your business." Elias didn't move. "I'm making sure a passenger is safe. That is my business." Mina felt the atmosphere tighten around them, like the air had turned into glass about to crack. She wanted to speak, but fear held her tongue. She knew what would happen if she admitted anything. She knew the price of honesty in a world ruled by someone like Ray. She stood quickly. I need to get some air." Elias stepped aside. Ray didn't. But Mina slipped past both of them before Ray could grab her. She went to the small space between the train cars, a narrow metal area with cold windows and louder noise. The wind rushing beneath the floor filled the silence she couldn't fill alone. Elias followed. But he kept a respectful distance. He didn't corner her. He didn't demand answers. He simply stood there, hands behind his back, waiting for the truth she was too scared to release. "You're frightened," he said softly. Mina didn't turn around. "I just needed space. That man, he hurt you." Her breath caught. She stared at the scuffed metal wall in front of her, fighting the tears burning behind her eyes. "I don't want trouble. You already have trouble," Elias said. "But you don't have to face it alone." She shook her head. "I don't have anywhere to go. Everyone has somewhere," he said. "Sometimes they just don't see it yet." His voice wasn't forceful. It wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of voice someone used when they didn't want to scare a frightened animal. Calm. Gentle, solid dot. The train began slowing. The speaker above them crackled, announcing the next station. Elias watched her carefully. "Listen," he said. "If you get off at this stop, I can call transit security. They can keep him away from you. You can start somewhere new. You don't have to go back to him." She looked through the window into the carriage. Ray was still in his seat, but his eyes were locked on her. Cold, promising, dangerous. Mina swallowed hard. "He'll find me." "Not if you let us help," Elias said. "But the choice is yours." The platform outside came closer. The brakes squealed. The doors released with a metallic click. Elias nodded toward them. "If you want to go, go now." Her legs felt shaky, like they belonged to someone else. But she stepped toward the doors anyway. One step, then another. Behind her, Ray stood up. The moment she saw him push through the crowd, something inside her snapped awake. Fear became urgency. Urgency became action. Elias whispered, "Now." "Mina." She stepped out. The doors began to slide shut. Ray reached the front of the crowd, shouting her name as he lunged toward the exit. But the train doors sealed. Just inches from his face. He slammed his fist against the glass, shouting, raging, helpless on the platform as the train rolled away. Mina tried to breathe, but her lungs shook. She wasn't free, not yet, because her mother was still on the train, still walking toward her, still tied to the man she had just escaped. And Mina knew the hardest moment wasn't leaving Ray behind. The train doors closed behind Mina's mother with a soft but final sound, a sound that made Mina's chest tighten. She had escaped Ray for the moment, but she hadn't escaped the world that shaped him, the world her mother was still part of. The train rolled forward, leaving the station lights behind in a blur of gold and steel. Mina stood on the platform, frozen, clutching the strap of her bag as if it were the only solid thing left in her life. She didn't feel safe. She didn't feel strong. She felt like someone who had run from a storm, only to find another one rising behind her. The train screeched again as it slowed at the next platform. Mina heard the doors open, and she turned slowly to see her mother stepping out. Lila looked smaller than before, as if a piece of her had been left behind with Ray. Her steps were hesitant, unsure, almost childlike. Mina didn't move. She didn't know if she should run, stay, or turn invisible. Lila stopped a few feet away. Her face was tired, lined with worry, shame, and something else Mina couldn't name. For a moment, they stared at each other through cold morning air. "You left him," Lila whispered. Mina didn't speak. She didn't trust her voice not to shake. Lila stepped closer, her purse dangling from her fingers. "Do you know what he'll do now?" Mina's voice was quiet. "I don't care." Lila swallowed hard. "I do." That sentence hung heavily between them. Mina waited, feeling the wind pull at her hair, feeling her heart thumping too fast to control. "Mom," she said softly, "I'm tired. I can't keep living like this." Lila's shoulders trembled. She wasn't a strong woman. She had never been strong in the way Mina needed her to be, but now her weakness looked like a mirror to Mina's own fear. Before Mina could say anything else, Elias stepped out of the train. He didn't interrupt. He didn't crowd them. He simply stood nearby, close enough to offer support, but far enough to give them privacy. Lila looked at him nervously. "Who is he?" "He works on the train," Mina said. He saw what Ray did. Lala closed her eyes the moment she heard that, as if the truth finally spoken aloud was too bright to look at directly. "He shouldn't have seen anything," she whispered. "People don't understand. People shouldn't have to," Mina answered. "Ray shouldn't hurt us." Lila breathed shakily. "You don't know what he's like when he's angry." Mina stepped forward. "I do. You'd think I don't, but I do." Lila touched her forehead, pressing her fingers into her skin. "You shouldn't have run. He'll follow us home." "I'm not going home," Mina said. Lila's eyes snapped open. "What? Where will you go?" "I don't know. But anywhere is better than going back to him." The words came out stronger than she expected. Elias nodded slightly, as if agreeing silently. Lila looked at the train, then at the tracks, then back at Mina. She was trembling. She looked like someone who had lived too long in fear and didn't know how to survive without it. "What about me?" she whispered. Mina softened. "You can come with me. But I won't force you." Lila didn't answer. She looked as lost as a child in a supermarket aisle. Elias took a slow step forward. "There's security inside the station," he said. "They can help both of you. You can get a protective order. You don't have to go back." Lila turned to him. "It's not that simple." "It never is," Elias replied. "But it can be safer." His voice was steady, careful, almost warm. Lila stared at him like she hadn't heard a kind tone directed toward her in a long time. Mina took her mother's hand, surprised when Lila didn't pull away. "Mom, please. I don't want to lose you. But I won't live with him again. If you stay with him, you stay without me." Lila's eyes filled with tears instantly. She covered her mouth, shaking her head. "Don't make me choose. You already chose for years," Mina whispered. "This time, choose us." For a moment, Lila looked like she might collapse. Elias shifted closer, ready to help if needed. But Lila stood upright again, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll go with you." Mina didn't expect those words. Her breath hitched, her knees softened, and for a second she thought she might fall. She squeezed her mother's hand gently, grounding both of them. Elias nodded. "Good, let's go inside. I'll make sure you're safe until security comes." Lila hesitated. "Ray will come here. He'll look for us." "He won't reach you," Elias said. "Not with officers here." He led them into the station. The warm air inside hit Mina's face like a small mercy. The sounds of chatter, footsteps, coffee machines, and early commuters filled the space with normalcy she desperately needed. A security desk sat near the center of the hall, with two officers talking. Elias approached them and spoke briefly. They looked toward Mina and Lila, then nodded and started preparing paperwork. One of them gestured toward a side room with glass walls and two chairs. "Let's sit," Mina whispered. Lila followed her inside. They sat across from each other, knees touching under the small table. Mina watched her mother nervously twisting the straps of her purse. "You don't have to be scared now," Mina said gently. "We're safe." Leela shook her head. "You don't understand. Ray always finds a way. He won't this time," Mina said, though she wasn't sure. But she needed to believe it. She needed her mother to believe it too. When an officer entered the room with a notebook, Lila tensed. "I don't know what to say." "Tell the truth," Mina replied. Lila looked down. "The truth hurts. The truth also saves," Mina whispered. Lila finally nodded. The officer sat. "Are you ready?" Mina spoke first, her voice surprisingly steady as she explained everything that had happened that morning, the grab on the platform, the shouting, the threats. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't dramatize. She didn't even cry. She spoke as if she had been waiting years to finally be heard. The officer wrote everything down. When it was her mother's turn, Leela hesitated. Her fingers trembled and her breath came shallow. Mina reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Lila took a shaky breath. "My husband. He has anger problems. He's hurt both of us many times. I stayed with them because I was scared. I didn't want to be alone. I didn't know how to leave." Her voice faltered. Mina squeezed her fingers gently. Lila continued. "But today, I saw him hurting her again. I saw myself in her, and I can't do it anymore. I want help. I want to be away from him." The officer nodded, his expression serious but kind. "You both did the right thing coming here." He stepped out to file the report, leaving the two of them alone again. Mina leaned back, exhausted, the weight of everything pressing down on her like bricks. "Mom," she whispered, "I didn't leave you. I left him." Lila covered her face, crying quietly. "I'm sorry. I know," Mina said. "I know." A soft knock sounded on the glass wall. When Mina looked up, she saw Elias standing outside, holding 2 paper cups of something warm. When the door opened, the smell of tea filled the room. "I thought you could use this," he said. Placing the cups on the table, Mina met his eyes. "Thank you." He nodded. "Security is filing everything. They'll take you to a safe place after this." Lila looked up. "Why are you helping us?" Elias hesitated, then spoke simply. "Because I've seen too many people go through this alone. I won't let it happen again." Lila stared at him with a strange mixture of gratitude and disbelief. Mina felt something inside her soften. Elias didn't owe them anything. He didn't gain anything by helping. He was just decent, rare, real. He cleared his throat. "I need to get back to the train soon, but I'll stay until the officers return." He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching over them like a quiet guardian. Mina studied his posture, the calmness in his eyes, the way he created safety without making a show of it. She hadn't felt this kind of protection in years, maybe never. Minutes passed. The officer returned. Papers were signed. Plans were made. The next steps were explained. Through it all, Mina felt Elias's reassuring presence nearby. Finally, the officer escorted Leela to speak privately with security. Mina stepped out to get a moment of air. Elias followed her to the hallway. "You did something brave today," he said. Mina looked at her hands. It didn't feel brave. "Bravery rarely feels like bravery in the moment," he said. "It feels like survival." She met his eyes. "Thank you for seeing me." "Most people don't." He smiled slightly. "I saw someone who needed help. That's all." But Mina knew it was more. He had noticed her pain when everyone else pretended nothing was wrong. He had stepped in without hesitation. He had given her a chance to escape. "I won't forget this," she whispered. "I don't need you to," he said. "Just take care of yourself." He took a small step back, preparing to leave when something unexpected flickered in his eyes, something warm, quiet, hopeful. The train whistle outside signaled departure. Elias nodded once more, then turned to walk away. But before he vanished down the hall, he said one last thing. "You deserve better than what you had." Mina felt those words sink deep into her chest, warming places she thought were frozen forever. The station was quiet now. The early morning rush fading into scattered commuters with bags slung over shoulders and coffee cups in hand. Mina and her mother stood just inside the side room, the protective glass separating them from the noisy world outside. The warmth of the station was a relief, but neither of them felt safe yet. Ray existed somewhere beyond the platform. Somewhere their lives intersected with danger, and the thought kept Mina on edge. She gripped her mother's hand tightly, trying to ground them both. Trying to remind herself that fear could exist alongside safety for a moment. Her mother, Lila, sat stiffly across from her, fingers twisting the strap of her purse like a lifeline. Her eyes were red, her face pale, and her shoulders trembled faintly. The realization that she had failed her daughter for years, the small, silent moments when she had looked away while Ray's anger escalated, pressed down on her like an invisible weight. She wanted to apologize, but the words felt fragile and inadequate. Mina's gaze stayed steady on her mother, reading the mix of shame, regret, and something else that was harder to define: relief. "I can't go back," Mina whispered. Her voice was soft, but in the empty room, it carried weight. "I won't." Lila nodded, a shiver running through her frame. "Neither can I," she admitted. Her voice cracked, but this time it was a sound of honesty, not fear. "I've been scared for so long, Mina. I didn't know how to leave. I didn't know how to protect you or myself." Mina's chest tightened, a lump forming in her throat. "You can start now," she said. "We can start together." The words felt like a promise, fragile yet real. They weren't safe yet. Ray was still out there, still capable of terrorizing their lives. But in this room, with Elias's quiet vigilance outside, with the officers preparing a safe plan for them, they had a moment to breathe. Minutes passed in a tense silence before a security officer returned, clipboard in hand. He motioned them to follow him toward a small, private office where they could file statements and begin the process of obtaining protection from Ray. Mina stood first, offering her hand to her mother. Lila took it, gripping it as if holding on to hope itself. The officer led them down the quiet hallway, and every step felt like leaving part of the fear behind on the tiles of the station. Inside the office, forms were signed. Statements were recorded. Officers asked questions gently but thoroughly, making sure every detail of Ray's past actions and present threat was documented. Mina answered without hesitation, her voice firm despite the tremble in her hands. She had spent years keeping herself small, silent, and unseen. Today, she refused to be invisible. She refused to allow fear to dictate her voice. Her mother's statement came next. At first, Lila's words were hesitant, shaky, and full of excuses. She faltered when mentioning Ray's actions, struggling to speak the truth about years of abuse. But Mina squeezed her hand gently, silently encouraging her to be honest. Gradually, Lila spoke more clearly, revealing the history that Mina had only partially known. She confessed how she had stayed with Ray because of fear, how she had avoided confrontation, how she had allowed her own safety to take precedence over her daughter's well-being. Each word seemed to unburden a part of her she hadn't realized was heavy until now, when the officer nodded and said that the report would be filed, that Ray would be barred from contact, and that a safe place was arranged for both of them. Mina felt a trembling relief wash over her. The threat wasn't gone. He still existed. But for the first time, there was a tangible barrier between them and his control. Outside the office, Elias waited. He had remained close, a silent presence watching over them, making sure nothing unexpected disrupted their fragile safety. When he saw Mina and her mother emerge, he offered a small smile. It wasn't a smile of triumph or patronizing reassurance. It was quiet, genuine, and full of understanding. "Everything's set," he said. "You'll be taken somewhere safe. No one can reach you there." Mina's heart thumped wildly. She felt exhaustion pressing down, the adrenaline of the morning slowly ebbing, leaving behind a nervous energy she couldn't shake. She looked at Elias, wanting to speak, to say something meaningful, but the right words didn't come. She only managed, "Thank you." He nodded. "You did the hard part. You spoke up. You chose yourself." Mina glanced at her mother, whose pale, tear-streaked face now carried a fragile relief. Lila squeezed Mina's hand, a silent acknowledgement that she was finally choosing life over fear. For years, she had hidden behind Ray's dominance, staying silent to protect herself, even as she failed Mina. Today, she had faced the truth, and for the first time, she stood beside her daughter instead of behind him. They were escorted toward the waiting security vehicle. The station's bright lights reflected off the shiny tile floor, and Mina noticed small details she hadn't before: the hurried footsteps of commuters, the faint aroma of coffee drifting from the cafe, the echo of conversations blending into the hum of the station. It felt ordinary, and yet everything had shifted for her. The world she had known, filled with fear and quiet suffering, was cracking, and through the cracks, she could see a possibility she had almost forgotten: freedom. As they approached the car, Elias remained just a few steps behind. "You'll be safe," he said again. "And if you need help, you have people who will listen." Mina nodded, feeling a strange flutter of hope. For the first time in years, she could imagine a life where she wasn't constantly bracing for pain, where she could breathe without fear, where her voice mattered. She glanced at her mother, who mirrored her expression with a hesitant, tentative smile. Inside the vehicle, the warmth was comforting, the hum of the engine steady. Mina and Lila sat side by side, hands clasped tightly. Neither spoke at first, the silence a shared understanding of what had just happened and what lay ahead. The vehicle moved through quiet streets, the city still waking, unaware of the small yet monumental change taking place within it. Mina reflected on the morning, on the fear that had gripped her at the platform, on the weight of her stepfather's presence, and the casual indifference of her mother that had hurt more than the physical abuse itself. But she also thought of Iliosta, calm, observant stranger who had noticed her suffering, who had acted without judgment, who had given her an option she didn't realize existed. In a way, he represented the possibility of kindness in a world that had so often ignored her pain. Her mother leaned slightly toward her, a quiet confession in the gesture. "I should have protected you," Lila whispered. "I didn't. I stayed silent. I was afraid. But I won't be silent anymore. I won't let him control us again." Mina felt tears rise, not of fear, but of relief. Relief mixed with exhaustion, with cautious hope, with the fragile beginnings of trust. "We'll figure it out together," she said. Her voice was low but firm. "We'll be okay." Lila nodded, gripping her daughter's hand even tighter. "Together," she agreed. The vehicle slowed as it approached a small, secure facility, the location discreet but clearly marked for emergency protection. Officers met them at the entrance, leading them inside with quiet efficiency. Every step felt like a step into a different life, a life where fear didn't dictate their choices, where safety could exist alongside freedom. Once inside, they were shown a modest room with warm lighting, a small kitchen area, and comfortable chairs. For the first time that day, Mina felt the possibility of rest, of relief that didn't carry a shadow. She sat down, letting the tension drain from her shoulders. Her mother followed, collapsing into a chair with a sigh that spoke volumes about the weight she had carried for years. Elias stood at the doorway, watching them. "You're safe now," he said softly. "You can stay here until everything is arranged. The officers will help with your next steps, but right now, just breathe." Mina's eyes met his, gratitude and something deeper flickering between them. She wanted to say more, to express the complexity of relief, fear, and unexpected connection, but the words didn't form. Instead, she simply nodded. Elias gave a small, reassuring smile, then turned to leave. At the door, he paused, looking back once more. "You deserve better than what you had," he said. "Never forget that." Mina let the words sink in. For years, she had believed she deserved fear, pain, and silence. Now, for the first time, someone outside her world acknowledged that she deserved care, safety, and respect. The statement lingered like a small, persistent light, warming places she hadn't realized were frozen. When the door closed behind Elias, Mina felt a rare sense of calm. Her mother's hand still held hers, and the presence of authority, safety. and choice created a space where fear no longer ruled. The morning's chaos, the terror, the trembling, they were behind her now. A new day had begun, fragile but filled with possibility. Minutes later, an officer returned, sitting across from them with a notebook. He explained the next steps in detail, how the protection order would be enforced, how they could relocate if necessary, and how support services would help them adjust. Mina listened carefully, absorbing each detail, knowing that each word represented a layer of security being added to their lives. Her mother listened too, slowly realizing that she had options she hadn't considered before. After the discussion, the officer left, leaving Mina and Lila alone. Mina looked around the room, the small comforts, the quiet stability, and finally allowed herself to exhale fully.